Racist cop attacks black FBI agent. Gets shocked when she fights back. In this gripping video, we delve into a tense and eye-opening encounter that unfolds between a racist cop and a black FBI agent. The story begins with a routine stop that quickly escalates into a shocking confrontation, revealing deeply ingrained prejudices and systemic issues within law enforcement. As the cop approaches with unwarranted aggression, the FBI agent, poised and professional, stands her ground, challenging the officer's assumptions and exposing the biases that permeate the system. If you're excited about this story, please let us know. If you enjoyed the video, please press 1. If not, press 0. Your feedback has inspired me to collect more uplifting and meaningful stories.
It was a warm afternoon in the busy city of Dallas when FBI Special Agent Anna Lawson, a brilliant and highly respected black woman, was driving back to her office after completing an intense investigation. She had been working on a high-profile case for months, tracking down a dangerous drug cartel, and she was close to making a breakthrough. Despite the exhaustion from long hours and pressure, Anna felt a sense of pride in her work. It wasn't easy being one of the few black women in a predominantly white, male-dominated agency, but she had earned her place. As she drove through the city, her mind raced with the details of the case. She was replaying the latest intel in her head when suddenly flashing blue lights appeared in her rearview mirror. Surprised, she glanced down at the speedometer. She wasn't speeding. Confused, she pulled over to the side of the road, wondering what she could have possibly done wrong. A police car pulled up behind her, and out stepped a tall white officer with a stern expression. He slowly walked up to her window, his hand resting on the holster of his gun. Anna rolled down her window, keeping calm as she reached for her FBI badge, ready to explain who she was. "Good afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" Anna asked politely. The officer, whose name badge read Officer Harris, barely looked at her license and registration. He barked, not bothering to greet her. Anna was taken aback by his tone, but remained professional. "I'm an FBI agent. Here's my badge," she said, holding it out for him to see. Officer Harris barely glanced at it before frowning. "I said license and registration." Anna's heart skipped a beat. Something wasn't right. She had encountered difficult cops before, but Harris was different. His cold, dismissive attitude toward her authority as a federal agent sent a chill down her spine. "Officer, I'm a federal agent. I'm on official duty," she reiterated, maintaining her calm demeanor. She was trying to defuse the situation before it escalated. Harris narrowed his eyes, ignoring her completely. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered sharply. Anna stared at him, shocked by the sudden escalation. "Excuse me, are you deaf?" "I said step out of the vehicle." Officer Harris's voice rose, drawing the attention of people nearby. Anna hesitated. She knew her rights, and she knew this wasn't right. There was no valid reason for her to be pulled over, let alone be asked to exit her car. But the situation was quickly spiraling out of control. She had been trained to handle high-stress situations, but this felt different. The tension in the air was thick, and the racial undertones were impossible to ignore. "Officer, I'm complying with your request, but I need you to understand that I am an FBI agent," she repeated, trying to de-escalate the situation. Harris's face twisted with disdain as he leaned closer to her window. "I don't care if you're the president. Step out of the vehicle, or I'll drag you out myself." Anna felt a knot in her stomach. She slowly opened her car door and stepped out, keeping her hands visible at all times. The people passing by were starting to watch, whispering among themselves, but no one intervened. Officer Harris moved toward her, and before she could say another word, he grabbed her roughly by the arm and shoved her against the car. "Hey, what are you doing?" Anna protested, her voice laced with anger and disbelief. "Resisting arrest, huh?" Harris sneered as he twisted her arm behind her back. "You think you can just flash a badge and do whatever you want, don't you?" Anna winced as the handcuffs tightened around her wrists. She couldn't believe what was happening. This was beyond humiliating. It was an outright abuse of power. As a federal agent, she had the authority to handle cases far more serious than simple traffic stops. Yet here she was, being treated like a common criminal simply because Officer Harris refused to recognize her status. People were now openly staring, some even recording the scene with their phones. Anna's face burned with a mix of anger and embarrassment, but she kept her head held high. She knew she had done nothing wrong, and she wasn't going to let this racist officer break her spirit. "Officer Harris, you're making a mistake," Anna said firmly, though her voice trembled slightly from the anger boiling inside her. "Shut your mouth," Harris snapped. "You think you're better than everyone else just because you work for the FBI? Well, let me tell you something. You're not above the law." Anna's mind raced. She needed to stay calm, but she also needed to figure out how to get out of this situation without making it worse. Her colleagues at the FBI would never believe this if she told them. Arrested for no reason while on duty. Officer Harris dragged her toward his patrol car, ignoring her every attempt to reason with him. As he shoved her into the back seat, Anna caught a glimpse of the people filming. The bystanders looked shocked, some murmuring in disbelief. But no one stepped forward to help. No one challenged the officer's actions. As the door slammed shut, Anna took a deep breath. She had been through many tough situations in her career, but this felt different. This felt personal. Harris had crossed a line, and she knew she couldn't let him get away with it. Her mind started working fast. She had to figure out her next move. Would she call for backup? Would she file a formal complaint? She couldn't afford to lose her temper. Not now. But she also couldn't let this injustice go unanswered. The patrol car pulled away from the curb, and Anna's thoughts raced. This was far from over. Sitting in the back of the patrol car, Anna's wrists throbbed from the tight handcuffs. The cold metal bit into her skin as she looked out the window, watching the city streets blur past. Her mind was spinning, but her instincts told her to stay calm. There had to be a way out of this. She knew Harris wasn't just another officer following orders. He was out to get her. Why? Was it because she was a black woman in a position of power? Or was it simply his need to control? Either way, it didn't matter now. What mattered was how she would handle this. As they drove, Anna considered asking Harris for help, or at least to loosen the cuffs. But from the look on his face earlier, she knew he'd never agree to anything that would make her situation easier. Harris glanced at her in the rearview mirror, a smirk playing on his lips. "You really thought you could get away with pretending to be FBI, didn't you?" he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Anna's eyes narrowed. "I'm not pretending," she said, her voice steady. "I am a federal agent, and you're making a huge mistake." Harris chuckled. "Sure you are, and I'm the chief of police," he sneered, mocking her authority. Anna's blood boiled, but she kept her cool. There was no point in arguing with him. The patrol car came to a stop in front of a small police station on the outskirts of Dallas. Anna's stomach sank. She recognized this place. It wasn't the usual precinct she was familiar with. This was an older, less used station, probably chosen on purpose to avoid any attention from higher-ups or from the FBI. Anna felt her pulse quicken as she realized the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about a simple misunderstanding. Harris had brought her here to make sure no one else could intervene. He had isolated her. He opened the car door and grabbed her arm roughly, pulling her out of the vehicle. "Let go, Agent Lawson," he sneered, emphasizing the word agent like it was a joke. She winced at the insult, but refused to show weakness. Anna had faced worse in her career, but this felt different. It was as though Harris was trying to break her down, and she couldn't let him succeed. Inside the station, it was eerily quiet. The few officers there barely glanced up as they passed by. Anna noticed their lack of reaction. It was as if this kind of behavior from Harris was normal, expected even. It was a chilling realization. No one was going to step in to help her. She was alone. Harris shoved her into a small interrogation room, slamming the door behind them. The room was dimly lit, with only a small metal table and 2 chairs. Anna's heart raced as she surveyed the surroundings. This was a corner of the world where she had no power. He paced back and forth in front of her, his voice a low growl. "Let's get one thing straight," he said, stopping to face her. "I don't care who you say you are. As far as I'm concerned, you're just another criminal trying to pull a fast one." Anna glared at him, refusing to be intimidated. "You're violating my rights. You have no reason to hold me, and when this is over, you'll regret it." Harris stopped pacing, his face inches from hers. He leaned in close, his breath hot on her face. "Is that a threat, Agent Lawson?" he asked in a mocking tone. She didn't flinch. "It's a promise," she said, her voice firm. For a moment, Harris stared at her, his expression hard. He straightened up, a smirk curling on his lips. "We'll see about that," he muttered, before turning and walking out of the room, leaving her alone in the silence. As the door clicked shut behind him, Anna exhaled slowly. She needed to find a way to contact her team. She couldn't rely on anyone in this station to help her. She was sure Harris would do everything in his power to keep her isolated. Anna's eyes scanned the room, looking for any possible means of escape. There was a small window near the ceiling, but it was too high to reach. The door was locked from the outside. The only thing she had was her badge, which she still carried in her jacket pocket. But with her hands cuffed behind her back, she couldn't even reach it. Minutes passed, and Anna's frustration grew. She was used to being in control, always the one making the arrests, not the other way around. This was a new situation, and the power dynamics were entirely different. She had to figure out a way to regain the upper hand. Suddenly, the door swung open, and another officer entered the room. This one was younger, maybe in his early 30s. His expression was nervous, and he seemed different from Harris. Less sure of himself, less aggressive. He glanced at her, then at the file in his hand. "Agent Lawson," he began cautiously, "I'm Officer Cole. I was told to process you for holding, but I just want to say I'm sorry about all this." Anna studied him closely, surprised by the lack of hostility. He seemed like he might be an ally. She could see a flicker of something in his eyes, something that suggested guilt or hesitation. "It's okay, Officer Cole. I understand the situation," Anna said, trying to keep her voice calm. She needed to stay focused. "But you need to know this is wrong. You have a choice." Before Officer Cole could respond, Harris stormed back into the room. His face darkened as he glared at Cole. "What are you waiting for? Get her processed," Harris snapped, his eyes burning with contempt. "She's just another perp, not a puzzle to solve." Officer Cole hesitated for a moment, clearly uncomfortable under Harris's glare, but reluctantly he nodded and began pulling out the paperwork. Anna could sense his unease, and for a fleeting moment she thought he might actually help her. I'll need to take some basic information, Agent Lawson, he said, his voice shaky as he pulled out his notepad and began to scribble. Name, date of birth, the usual. Anna eyed him carefully, watching his every movement. Cole seemed torn, his eyes darting nervously between her and the door, as if he expected Harris to burst in at any moment. You know, what's happening here isn't right, Anna said firmly, her tone steady. She could see Cole wrestling with the decision, but she wasn't sure if he was ready to help her. He paused, his pen hovering above the notepad. Anna leaned forward slightly, her voice low but firm. You may not make the rules, but you have the power to decide whether or not to follow orders that you know are wrong. Cole froze for a second, clearly caught in the internal struggle. She could see the hesitation in his eyes, and she knew this was her moment. He had to decide which side he was on. Before Cole could speak, the door slammed open again. Harris stood in the doorway, his face red with anger. What's taking so long? He barked, glaring at Cole. She's a criminal, not a goddamn guest. Get her processed and get her out of my sight. Officer Cole jumped to his feet, clearly rattled by Harris's outburst. I was just getting her basic information, he stammered. Harris sneered. I don't care about her name. I don't care about anything except getting her behind bars. Get it done. Cole hesitated for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. He turned back to Anna, his face apologetic. I'm sorry. The young officer gathered the papers and motioned for Anna to follow him. Anna stood up slowly, her mind already racing with her next move. Harris had no idea who he was dealing with. She had spent her entire career fighting for justice, and she wasn't about to let this corrupt officer destroy everything she had worked for. They moved through the station's narrow hallways, Cole leading the way with his head down, avoiding eye contact. Anna could feel the tension building in the air. She didn't trust Harris, and she didn't trust the other officers in this station. But she couldn't give up now. They reached a small holding cell at the end of the hallway, its bars cold and unforgiving. Cole unlocked the door, and Anna stepped inside, her stomach sinking. This wasn't just a simple detainment. It was a deliberate attempt to break her, to isolate her from the rest of the world. Harris wanted her out of the picture, and she couldn't let that happen. As the door slammed shut behind her, Anna quickly surveyed the cell. There was nothing of use. The room was barren, except for a single bench attached to the wall. The harsh fluorescent lights above flickered every few seconds, casting a cold glow on the concrete floor. Cole stood by the door, his eyes flicking nervously between her and the hallway. He was obviously uncomfortable, but he hadn't shown any signs of trying to help. We'll be back soon, he muttered, looking down at his feet. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Anna alone in the small, sterile cell. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Anna sat on the cold bench, her mind racing. She had to stay calm. She knew her rights, and she knew Harris was playing a dangerous game. But Anna also knew something that Harris didn't. She wouldn't let him break her. She had to figure out how to turn the tables. She could feel the pressure mounting, and every second that passed was a second closer to Harris figuring out where she was. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Anna stiffened, wondering who it could be. Her pulse quickened as the footsteps grew louder. Cole appeared at the door, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood another officer, a tall, older man who looked less certain of the situation. He glanced at Anna with a mixture of concern and confusion, his eyes darting toward the door to make sure Harris wasn't nearby. Agent Lawson, the older officer said softly, his voice hesitant. "I'm Officer Jackson. I'm here to process you." Anna met his gaze. Something about his demeanor seemed different. He wasn't the same as the others. Jackson seemed unsure. But he wasn't hostile. This could be her chance to get through to someone who wasn't fully aligned with Harris's corruption. "What's going on here?" Anna asked, her voice firm, but with a hint of desperation. "I don't belong here. You have to help me." Officer Jackson glanced around nervously, his eyes flicking toward the hallway as if he was afraid someone might overhear. He stepped closer to the bars, lowering his voice. "Listen, Agent Lawson, I know this isn't right, but I can't just walk out of here and make it all disappear." Anna could see the fear in his eyes, the hesitation in his posture. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, but there was still a glimmer of doubt in his actions. He wasn't entirely convinced that everything he had been told about her arrest was true. "You don't have to do this, Officer Jackson," Anna said softly, her voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath her calm exterior. "You can make a choice right now. I'm an FBI agent. This is a mistake, and you know it." For a long moment, Jackson said nothing. His gaze dropped to the floor, and Anna saw him struggling with his conscience. She could see that he was torn, unsure of how far he was willing to go to do the right thing, in a place where corruption seemed to run rampant. Finally, Jackson looked back up at Anna, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "I can't just let you go, Agent Lawson. Harris has everyone wrapped around his finger, but I'll try to get you out of here as soon as I can. Just hang tight." Anna nodded, grateful that he at least seemed willing to help, even if it wasn't immediate. He stepped back, his hand hovering over the keys, as though ready to unlock the door. But he hesitated once again, as if unsure whether he should do it. The door to the interrogation room suddenly opened, and Officer Harris walked in, his face a mixture of fury and satisfaction. Jackson stepped back from the bars, his posture rigid, as though he had been caught doing something he shouldn't have. "What's going on in here?" Harris demanded, his eyes narrowing as they darted from Jackson to Anna. "You have her processed yet? She's just another criminal. What are you waiting for?" Jackson stammered, clearly caught off guard by Harris's sudden arrival. I was just about to..." Harris cut him off. "Well, hurry up. She doesn't belong here. She's wasting my time." He turned to Anna, his eyes hard. "You think you can outsmart me with that badge of yours? You've got another thing coming." Anna's pulse quickened. She knew this was coming. Harris had made his intentions clear from the moment she had encountered him, and now he was determined to break her. But she wasn't going to let him. Not now. Not ever. "You're making a mistake," Anna said, her voice calm, filled with the quiet authority she knew so well. "But I won't let you intimidate me. This won't end well for you, Officer Harris. You'll be held accountable for your actions." Harris scoffed, his eyes narrowing with contempt. "You don't scare me, Agent Lawson. You think you can come in here and tell me what to do? I'll make sure you regret every single thing you've done to me." The tension in the room was thick, and for a moment, it felt like time itself had stopped. Anna could hear her heartbeat in her ears, the pounding rhythm of her anger mixing with the growing realization that things were about to escalate. The door slammed open again, and a group of officers filed in, led by a familiar face, Lieutenant Daniels. Anna's stomach twisted in knots. Her worst fear was confirmed. Lieutenant Daniels was part of the group that had been complicit in Harris's plan all along. "What's the situation here?" Daniels asked coolly, his eyes scanning the room with disdain. His gaze locked onto Anna, and she could feel his silent judgment wash over her like a heavy wave. "She's a problem," Harris said, his voice dripping with venom. "A federal agent who thinks she can do whatever she wants. It's time to put her in her place." Daniels nodded slightly, his expression unreadable. He didn't respond immediately, but Anna could see the gears turning in his mind. He was weighing his next move, and she knew that he wouldn't hesitate to use whatever leverage he had to keep the situation under control. "We need to figure out a way to contain her," Daniels said, his eyes narrowing. "She's too much of a liability to be left unchecked." Anna's eyes flicked between Harris and Daniels, a sick feeling twisting in her stomach. They were all working together, trying to break her. They would do whatever it took to cover up their tracks, and she was just a piece in their game. But Anna wasn't done fighting. She had one last chance. Cole. She could sense that Officer Cole was still on the fence, still not fully committed to supporting Harris and Daniels. "Cole, you still have time to do the right thing," Anna said, her voice steady and firm. She turned to him, hoping that he was still listening. "You can't let them get away with this. You have a choice." Cole hesitated, his eyes darting between Anna and the officers around him. His face was pale, and he seemed to be struggling with the decision. But before Cole could respond, Harris stormed up to Anna, his face twisted in anger. "Enough of this!" he shouted, grabbing her roughly by the arm and pulling her toward the door. Anna resisted, her strength growing as she refused to let him drag her away. She had to stay calm, but her fury was building. She couldn't afford to let them break her. She had to get out of here. She had to fight back. As the door slammed shut behind them, Anna knew that the stakes had never been higher. Harris was closing in, and there was only one way out, but she wasn't going down without a fight. Anna Lawson was going to take this all the way to the top, no matter what it took. At this point, Anna was pushed into the back of another patrol car, the cold metal biting into her wrists as she glanced around, calculating her next move. Harris was following her every move, and she could feel the tension building in the air. But she also knew that she had an ally waiting for her, a chance for justice. The patrol car sped down the dark streets, the headlights cutting through the thick darkness of the night. Anna's thoughts raced as she tried to stay calm, knowing that Harris was bound to escalate things even further. She needed to think fast and come up with a way to turn this situation to her advantage. She couldn't afford to make any mistakes. The last thing she needed was for Harris to get any more leverage over her. As they drove deeper into Dallas, Anna's mind flashed back to her training, the countless situations she had been through in her career, the moments when everything seemed impossible, but she always managed to pull through. She wasn't about to let this be the one that broke her. The car came to a screeching halt in front of an old, abandoned building. The eerie quiet of the place made Anna's nerves tingle, and she felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She glanced out the window, trying to read the environment. Harris had stopped the car, and without saying a word, he yanked her roughly from the back seat and pushed her toward the entrance of the building. The night air was cold, and she could feel the chill running through her, but she held her ground, her posture stiff with determination. Inside the building, the silence was almost suffocating. Anna felt a wave of unease wash over her as she looked around, noting the dilapidated walls and rusted metal doors. This wasn't just some random spot. It was a place that was carefully chosen, likely to keep anyone from noticing her disappearance. Harris grabbed her by the arm and shoved her toward a small room at the back. Anna's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to stay composed. She couldn't let him see how afraid she was. The moment they entered the room, Harris slammed the door shut behind them. It was a small space, with only a table and a couple of chairs. The dim light flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the walls. Anna didn't need to look around too long to know that the odds were stacked against her here. "You're in my territory now, Agent Lawson," Harris spat, his eyes burning with anger. "And I'm not about to let some FBI agent come in here and ruin everything I've worked for." Anna's throat tightened, but she managed to speak through the lump in her chest. "You're making a huge mistake, Harris. You can't just make people disappear because you're scared of the truth." He sneered at her, taking a step closer. "You think I'm scared of you? You're just another pawn. You were never meant to be more than that." Anna's mind raced. She had to find a way to get out of this room, to contact someone. But Harris wasn't giving her any time to think. He moved quickly, standing over her, his shadow looming large across the small room. "I'll make sure your career is over by the time we're done here," he threatened, his voice dripping with malice. "I'll make sure no one ever believes you." But just as Harris moved closer, the sound of footsteps echoed outside the room. Anna's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Could someone be coming to help her? The door suddenly creaked open, and a figure appeared in the doorway. Officer Cole. "Harris," he said, his voice trembling, "you can't do this. This isn't right." Anna looked up at him, her heart racing with hope. Could he be here to help her? Or was this another trap? Harris turned toward Cole, his expression hardening. "You've got 5 seconds to get out of here, Cole. Don't make me deal with you too." Cole hesitated, clearly nervous, but there was something in his eyes, something that told Anna he wasn't entirely sure about what was going on. This was her chance. "Cole, you have to help me," Anna said, her voice urgent. "You know this is wrong. You can't let him get away with it." For a long moment, Cole stood there, torn between his loyalty to Harris and his growing discomfort with the situation. Finally, he nodded, though his face was pale with fear. "I'm going to help you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But we need to move fast." Anna felt a flicker of hope, but she knew that they had little time. She had to get out of here before Harris figured out what was going on. Cole quickly motioned for her to follow him. The two of them slipped out of the room and into the narrow hallway. Every footstep felt like it might echo through the building, alerting Harris to their movements. They crept through the dark corridors, moving swiftly and silently. Anna could feel her heart pounding in her chest. The adrenaline coursed through her veins as she tried to keep her cool. They were so close. Finally, they reached the back door, and Cole pulled out a set of keys. The sound of the lock turning was deafening in the silence, but before they could escape, a voice echoed from the shadows. "Going somewhere?" Anna froze. Harris was standing there, a smug smile playing on his lips. He had them cornered. "I knew you two were up to something," he said, his voice dripping with victory. "You think you can just walk out of here? Not so fast." Anna's pulse quickened as Harris stepped closer, blocking the door. His smug expression only added to the tension. She could feel Cole behind her, his anxiety palpable as he realized just how dangerous the situation was becoming. "You think you've outsmarted me?" Harris sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're just as much a pawn as anyone else, Lawson. You can't escape me. You're stuck here, and when I'm done with you, no one will believe your story." Anna stood her ground, her heart racing in her chest, but she refused to back down. Harris was trying to intimidate her, but she wouldn't let him win. Not now, not ever. She had come too far, and she couldn't let him break her spirit. "You've made a mistake, Harris," Anna said, her voice steady but fierce. "You don't know who you're dealing with. I'm not backing down." Harris let out a mocking laugh, stepping forward as if he were about to seize her. "You think you can take me on?" he taunted, his voice low and menacing. "You're just one woman. What can you possibly do against me?" Anna stood her ground, her fists clenched at her sides, her breathing steady. Harris might have been in control right now, but she wasn't about to let him have the final word. She had to think quickly, find a way to regain the upper hand before it was too late. Suddenly, there was a loud bang from the hallway, followed by the sound of boots pounding the floor. Anna's heart skipped a beat. It was back up. Finally. Cole turned to look at the door, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What's going on?" he whispered urgently. Before Harris could react, the door swung open, and Lieutenant Daniels appeared in the doorway, flanked by 2 more officers. Harris's face twisted in anger, but his authority was no longer as strong as it had been moments before. Daniels didn't look pleased, and Anna could sense the tension in the air. "Harris, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Daniels barked, his voice cold and commanding. "You're jeopardizing everything we've worked for." Harris stiffened, clearly trying to assert his dominance in the situation. "She's a threat, Daniels. She's FBI. I'm doing what needs to be done." Daniels's gaze hardened as he stepped further into the room. "You're out of line. I don't care who she is, but this is going too far. Let her go." Anna felt a surge of hope at Daniel's words, though she couldn't let her guard down completely. She needed to keep the pressure on. She wasn't out of danger yet. "You can't just come in here and tell me what to do," Harris snapped, his hands trembling with anger. "This is my operation. I make the calls here." Daniels stepped forward, his face unwavering. "Not anymore. You've crossed the line. Step aside, Harris." For a moment, everything was frozen. Harris looked between Daniels and Anna, his face twisted with fury, but he knew better than to challenge Daniels any further. With a growl of frustration, he stepped aside, unwillingly allowing Anna to stand tall once again. "You've lost, Harris," Anna said, her voice sharp and commanding. "It's over." Daniels nodded toward the officers who had followed him in, signaling them to move forward. "Take her into protective custody. We'll figure out who's been behind this." As Anna was escorted out of the room, she couldn't help but feel a wave of relief wash over her. She wasn't out of the woods yet, but for the first time since all of this started, she had a chance. With Daniels' support, she could finally start getting answers. They led Anna through the building, away from Harris and toward a more secure part of the station. The officers who had been following Daniels' orders seemed to respect him, and that gave Anna some confidence. She couldn't shake the fear, but now there was a glimmer of hope. "I never expected to see the day when Harris would be taken down," Cole muttered as he walked beside her. He was still nervous, but there was a subtle hint of respect in his voice. "You did the right thing, Cole," Anna said quietly. "You helped me, and now we can make sure Harris can't hurt anyone else." As they reached the back office, Daniels turned to Anna. "We've got your back now, Lawson, but we need to move fast. This is bigger than either of us thought." Anna nodded, trying to calm her racing mind. Harris had been dangerous, and the fact that he'd had such control over the precinct was terrifying. But it wasn't over yet. There were still questions, and Anna was determined to get to the bottom of it. "I won't stop until Harris and everyone involved is brought to justice," Anna said, her voice steady and full of determination. "I've been through too much to let it end here." Anna sat down at a desk in the small back office, her thoughts swirling with everything that had just happened. The adrenaline that had kept her moving all night was slowly starting to fade, replaced by the weight of exhaustion. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The room was quiet, save for the muffled sounds of officers moving about in the corridor outside. Daniels stood by the door, watching her with a thoughtful expression. Cole lingered near the back, his hands fidgeting nervously. "What now?" Anna asked, breaking the silence. She needed a plan. They couldn't just sit around and hope Harris would be taken care of. This was bigger than a single corrupt officer. There was an entire system that needed to be exposed. Daniels looked at her, his expression grave. "We need to move fast. We've got to gather all the evidence we can before Harris or anyone else in the department can cover their tracks." Anna nodded. That was exactly what she needed to hear. "What about the other officers? Do we have any allies left in this precinct?" Daniels hesitated for a moment before speaking, his gaze flickering toward Cole. "There are a few who are still with us, but we can't be sure who we can trust right now. Everyone's scared, but we'll need to find the paperwork, surveillance footage, anything that ties Harris and the others to what's been going on." Anna stood up, her resolve firming. "I'll start with the files. If we can find one lead, just one, it'll be enough to take down the whole operation. We have to act fast." Daniels gave a quick nod. "I'll pull the records. We'll meet back here in an hour. Don't talk to anyone until then. And be careful." The next hour felt like an eternity. Anna sifted through the files, each one filled with clues she had already seen or dismissed in her initial investigation. But now it was different. Now everything had a purpose, and each detail felt more important than the last. As she flipped through the stacks of documents, a few names caught her eye. Names that had been part of the department's payroll, but had never made it onto her radar before. Officers, some of them high-ranking, who had been involved in cases linked to Harris. This was the break she needed. Anna grabbed the file and pulled out a thick stack of documents that listed the names of several officers under investigation in various cases. Among them, she noticed one officer's name, appearing repeatedly, Officer Mark Jackson. She couldn't believe it. Jackson, the same officer who had shown a flicker of hesitation back at the building, the one who had tried to help her. If his name was this heavily involved, then it was clear that things had gone deeper than she initially thought. The more she dug, the more it became apparent that this wasn't just a local operation. It was a carefully orchestrated network that reached far beyond the precinct. Daniels returned, looking over her shoulder at the pile of documents. "I see you found something," he remarked, his tone more serious now. Anna didn't hesitate. "I found Jackson's name on several investigations connected to Harris. We need to dig deeper into this." Daniels raised an eyebrow but didn't question her. "If Jackson's involved, then we have a bigger problem on our hands. We'll need to get the surveillance footage and start compiling everything to build the case." Anna nodded, but she felt a pang of uncertainty in her chest. Could she really trust Jackson? After all, he had been part of Harris's circle, and now that she had found evidence linking him to Harris, she wasn't sure what to believe. They spent the next few hours collecting everything they could. The tension in the station was palpable. Officers came and went, but no one seemed to take notice of the quiet, deliberate actions happening in the back office. Anna felt like they were walking a tightrope. One wrong move, and everything would come crashing down. As the clock ticked past midnight, Daniels gave her a grave look. "We've gathered everything. It's time to confront them." Anna stood up, ready to take the next step. This was her moment. She had everything she needed to expose Harris, to bring him down once and for all. But she knew it wouldn't be easy. Harris would fight back with everything he had. "Let's do it," she said, her voice firm and steady. She wasn't going to let fear dictate her actions any longer. They walked down the narrow hallway, their steps muffled against the concrete floor. As they approached the interrogation room, Anna's heart beat louder in her chest. This was it. They were about to confront Harris, and this would either be the end of his career or the start of a dangerous retaliation. The door to the interrogation room was ajar, and Anna's gaze flicked inside. Harris was sitting at the table, his back turned to them, facing the wall. He seemed relaxed, but the tension in his posture told Anna that he was ready for anything. Without waiting, Daniels stepped forward and pushed the door open fully. "It's over, Harris," he said, his voice cold. Harris turned in his seat, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can take me down? You've got nothing." Anna stepped forward, holding up the stack of files she had collected. "We have everything we need to end this, Harris." Harris's expression faltered just for a second, but it was enough. He had known he was being watched, but now the pieces were coming together, and he had nowhere to hide. "You're done, Harris." Anna's voice was final. "We'll make sure the truth comes out. You can't cover it up anymore." Harris looked between Anna and Daniels, his expression turning from defiant to nervous. For the first time, the control he had so carefully maintained slipped, and Anna saw the cracks in his facade. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something much darker. "You think you can just waltz in here and make all my problems disappear?" Harris growled, his voice a low snarl. "You don't know who you're messing with." Anna didn't flinch. She had been through too much to let his threats get to her. "I don't need to know everything about you, Harris. I just need the truth. And it's time for you to face it." Daniels stepped forward, his gaze hard. "You're done, Harris. The people you've been working with, no one's going to protect you anymore." Harris's fists clenched, his knuckles white. He pushed himself up from the chair, standing tall, as if to show he was still in control. But his stance was shaky, the air of invincibility fading with each passing second. He was cornered, and he knew it. "You're not going to get away with this." Harris spat, stepping closer to Anna and Daniels. His gaze flickered between them, searching for an escape. Anna stood her ground. "You've been getting away with it for too long, Harris. It ends now." For a moment, there was silence. The only sound was Harris's heavy breathing, and Anna could almost feel the weight of the decisions they were about to make. This was it, the final confrontation, the tipping point where everything that had been building up would either crash down on them or they would walk away victorious. But just as Harris opened his mouth to speak again, the sound of the front door opening echoed through the building. Footsteps hurried toward them, and Anna turned, her hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm. Daniels followed her lead, his posture tense. They both knew that at any moment, things could escalate. The door to the interrogation room opened, and in walked a group of officers. At the front of the group was Sergeant Miller, a senior officer that Anna had been trying to trust since the beginning of this investigation. "What's going on here?" Miller demanded, his gaze shifting from Harris to Anna and Daniels. Harris quickly straightened up, his eyes narrowing at Miller as if hoping for a rescue. "Miller, you don't know what's happening here. They're trying to frame me." But Miller didn't take the bait. Instead, he walked toward the table and laid a folder down in front of Harris, his expression grim. "We've got your file, Harris. All of it. Everything you've been hiding is right here." He gestured to Anna. "I was told to stay out of it, but the truth's too big to ignore." Harris looked at Miller, his face paling. "You—" Miller cut him off with a firm, cold voice. "You've been playing us all, Harris. You've been using your position to cover up your crimes. It's over." His tone was steady, unwavering. There was no hesitation in his words. He had made up his mind, and Harris was no longer the ally he thought he was. Anna watched closely, trying to read Miller's intentions. She had hoped for this moment, but she still couldn't be entirely sure. Could she trust him? "You—" Harris started to speak, but he couldn't find the words. His bravado was gone, replaced by a sinking feeling of realization. The game was up. He was done. "We have evidence of everything, Harris," Anna said, her voice steady. "Your connections, your manipulation. It's all here, and we're going to make sure the world knows it." Miller nodded, his face hardening as he stepped closer to Harris. "This is bigger than you. You may have thought you could control everything, but no one's invincible, not even you." The hours that followed were filled with activity. Officers gathered the final pieces of evidence, piecing together the full story of Harris's criminal network. Anna was finally able to contact the right people, her superiors at the FBI, and those who had been on the periphery of this case, waiting for a sign. But as she sat in the back office, the weight of the situation settled over her. Harris had been just one part of the problem, but now it was clear that the corruption ran deeper than anyone had expected. There were more officers involved, more people who had turned a blind eye for their own gain. This wasn't just about Harris anymore. It was about dismantling a system built on lies and fear. Daniels walked into the room, his face drawn with exhaustion. "It's done," he said, his voice low. "The arrest went through. We've got him, Anna. He's in custody." Anna nodded, though she didn't feel the relief she thought she would. She had done what she set out to do, but there was still much work ahead. The damage had been done, but now they had a chance to rebuild, to right the wrongs that had plagued Dallas for so long. "It's not over, Daniels," Anna said, her voice resolute. "There's still so much to uncover. Harris was just the beginning. We need to keep pushing, or else all this will be for nothing." Daniels looked at her for a moment, his eyes meeting hers. Then, with a slight nod, he acknowledged the truth in her words. "You're right." The next few days were a blur of meetings, paperwork, and calls. Anna worked alongside her team, pushing through the red tape and gathering the final pieces of evidence that would bring justice to those affected by Harris's actions. She knew there would be pushback from those who wanted to keep the old system in place, but she wouldn't let it stop her. Eventually, the news broke. Dallas was reeling from the revelations, and the public outcry was immediate. Harris was arrested, and soon after, a number of other officers were implicated in his crimes. Anna had done what she set out to do, but the work was far from over. There would be more investigations, more challenges, and more battles to fight. But as she stood at the edge of it all, watching the city begin to heal, Anna knew one thing for sure. She wasn't done. Harris might have fallen, but there were others who would rise to take his place, and she would be there, ready to fight for what was right. Anna Lawson, an FBI agent, found herself caught in a web of systemic injustice, a victim of both racial prejudice and institutional corruption. Her journey began on a typical day, as she was driving back from an investigation, unaware that the events of that afternoon would challenge her sense of power, identity, and justice. A routine traffic stop quickly escalated into a harrowing confrontation with Officer Harris, who dismissed her FBI badge and authority, subjecting her to unwarranted detainment. As she was dragged from her car and pushed into the back of a police patrol car, Anna could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. It wasn't just the unjust treatment she was facing. It was the culmination of years of systemic racism and abuse of power within law enforcement. In the face of this, Anna's resilience was put to the test. Despite being humiliated and physically assaulted, she remained steadfast in her belief in the truth. She knew the laws and her rights, but more importantly, she knew that giving up wasn't an option. This wasn't just a matter of personal affront. It was a fight for dignity, for justice, and for the system she had devoted her career to. She wasn't just an FBI agent in that moment. She was a symbol of every black woman who had ever been diminished or silenced by the systems that were supposed to protect her. Her situation worsened when she was taken to an isolated police station, a strategic move to prevent intervention. Inside the station, Anna was further isolated, her attempts to explain her identity dismissed, her rights violated. Officer Harris's cruel disregard for the law and his deep-seated animosity toward Anna were apparent in every action he took. Yet, Anna remained calm, using her training and mental strength to analyze her options. She knew that this encounter, though personal, was part of a larger, more insidious problem, one that could not be solved by simply proving her identity. It was a systemic issue, a pattern of abuse that needed to be addressed at its root. In the midst of this turmoil, Anna found unexpected allies. Officer Cole, younger and more unsure, seemed to hesitate at first, but was eventually swayed by the undeniable wrongness of the situation. Lieutenant Daniels also played a critical role, stepping in when the situation seemed its darkest, signaling that not all law enforcement officers were complicit in corruption. These moments of allyship were crucial in Anna's fight, showing that while standing against injustice often feels like a solitary battle, support can come from unexpected places. Allyship, after all, isn't just about offering help when it's easy. It's about making difficult choices, taking risks, and standing up for what is right, even when it's uncomfortable. As Anna's plight grew more dire, it became clear that Officer Harris wasn't just an individual problem, but part of a larger, institutionalized issue. His actions were not isolated. They were enabled by a corrupt system that had allowed him to operate without consequence. It became evident that Anna wasn't just fighting for her own freedom, but for the integrity of the justice system itself. The story of her arrest and the subsequent events revealed the dangerous undercurrent of corruption within the precinct, and it wasn't long before Anna began to piece together the full extent of the problem. The more she uncovered, the more she realized that Harris was part of a wider network of individuals who had abused their power to protect themselves and perpetuate a system of inequality. The road to exposing this corruption was fraught with danger, but Anna, despite the pressure, knew that for true justice to prevail, she had to see this through to the end. With the help of Lieutenant Daniels and Officer Cole, Anna was able to gather evidence that would eventually bring Harris and his associates down. As they uncovered more layers of corruption, it became clear that this was not just a case of one bad apple, but a symptom of a much larger problem. The system, one that Anna had once believed in so deeply, had been corrupted by greed, racism, and power. The revelation of this corruption was a pivotal moment, not just for Anna, but for everyone who had been victimized by the same system. Anna's determination to expose the truth didn't come without personal sacrifice. The emotional toll of her ordeal, coupled with the weight of knowing she was up against powerful forces, threatened to break her. Yet, she continued, driven by the belief that exposing the truth was the only way forward. Her struggle illuminated a central truth, that justice isn't simply about adhering to the letter of the law. It's about standing up for what is right, even when doing so feels like an insurmountable task. It was not enough for Anna to clear her name. She needed to dismantle the corrupt system that had enabled her mistreatment in the first place. Through her struggle, Anna learned the importance of resilience, not just for survival, but for the broader fight for equality. She understood that confronting systemic oppression isn't about waiting for change to come from the top down, but about demanding change, speaking truth to power, and holding those who perpetuate injustice accountable. Her journey illustrated the importance of taking action, even when the odds seem insurmountable, because change only comes when individuals, armed with the truth and a sense of righteousness, refuse to be silent. The lessons from Anna's experience resonate beyond the confines of law enforcement and touch on the wider societal issues of inequality, racism, and the abuse of power. They remind us that confronting systemic injustice requires not only personal courage, but collective action. Anna's victory wasn't just her own. It was a victory for all those who have ever been silenced or oppressed by institutions of power. Her story encourages us to keep fighting, to keep pushing for a system that is truly just and fair for everyone, regardless of race, gender, or background. In the end, the story of Anna Lawson teaches us that while the fight for justice is long and difficult, it is also necessary. The lessons learned from her journey, resilience in the face of adversity, the importance of allyship, the need for accountability, and the unyielding belief in justice are all crucial to the ongoing fight for equality. Anna may have faced tremendous challenges, but through her determination and the support of those who stood with her, she was able to make a real difference. Her story shows that when we stand together and fight for what is right, even the most deeply entrenched systems of power can be changed.
What were your thoughts and feelings after listening to the story? Did it resonate with your own experiences or emotions in any way? We would love to hear your insights and reflections, so please share your comments below. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more captivating tales and engaging content. Wishing you and your family good health and peace.